Yeah, check me out, y'all. Nasty Watts in your area. About to cause mass hysteria. À la claire ensemble, baby. Check it. Yo. Les things get to do to me usually me then I'll.
What up, y'all? It's your boy Home Team here. I'm back at it with another video of African history, culture, and worldview. Today I want to talk about the Kanem Empire. Now, the Kanem Empire was right smack dab in the middle of Africa. And it's kind of like the best of West Africa and the best of East Africa came together and just formed this amazing empire. There's so many great things about the Kanem Empire. I probably won't even have enough time to do this one video. It had great kings, a huge empire, amazing trade, and foreign relations. Now, the significant thing about the Kanem Empire was that it was one of the longest lasting empires in not only Africa, but the world. It lasted from the 9th century all the way to the 19th century. That's a long time. And it was well known for its armored knights. Yeah, I said knights. And cavalry. Now, we have a tendency to look at West African empires as like a well-defined territory with one particular ethnic group that kind of dominated in the region or in the empire, but not with Kanem. Kanem was like a collection or utopia of different African ethnic groups that came together to form this amazing nation. And that's one of the reasons why it was so great. Now, when inquiring about the origins of the Kanem Empire, European scholars would look at it, and like many other African nations, they would say to themselves, oh, these people must have came from the Middle East. But fortunately for us today, modern scholars have identified who the originators of the Kanem Empire were. We identify them today as the Kanembu or the Kanuri. Now, the Kanuri are like a subgroup of the larger Kanembu people. Now, the Kanembu first came to the region and they interacted with the Sao people or the Sao civilization, and they formed large walled city-states and had a tremendous flourishing culture. And the Kanembu people over some time pretty much absorbed the Sao culture in that region and created what we know today as the Kanem Empire. Now later, the Sefuwa people take over and they introduce Islam into the area. Now, Islam is known to have come in the area around the 11th century. And ironically enough, the first person to convert to Islam was actually a woman from the Kanembu tribal group. Her name was Hawa, and Hawa pretty much dominated for about 8 years, and then the Sefuwa took over, the Sefuwa dynasty. And after the Sefuwa dynasty took over, that's when they had a tremendous impact on what we know today as the Kanem Empire. Now, one of the greatest kings from the Kanem Empire was Dunama. Now, Dunama was from the Sefuwa dynasty, or the Sefuwa subgroup. And pretty much under his rule, Kanem turned into a beast. Now, the significant thing about Dunama was that he was a devout Muslim. And he was so devout that he considered anybody who wasn't like him pretty much a heathen. This dude went on pilgrimages, he went on jihads, he established foreign relations with Egypt and with Mecca. This guy was really into his trade and his religion. Now, it's not like other groups within the Kanem Empire weren't Muslim. It's just that they had a particular form of Islam that Dunama didn't really appreciate. They were called Sufi Muslims. What these Sufi Muslims would do is they would incorporate some of their own indigenous beliefs into Islam. And Dunama wasn't having that. Now, since Dunama was such a devout Muslim, he did the worst thing he could have ever done in his region. He destroyed this African relic called the Mune. Now, the Mune was pretty much like the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant to these African people. And Dunama was basically saying, you know, if we're going to be Muslims, we might as well do it all the way. But because there were other African groups within the Kanem Empire that cherished not only their indigenous beliefs and Islam, they were upset when he destroyed the Mune relic. Now, in order to truly understand the Kanem Empire, you have to understand this African relic. Now, this African relic isn't really well known. They don't really know what it really was. But apparently, to these African people, it was like the Ark of the Covenant. And so when Dunama destroyed it, the gates of hell pretty much broke loose. Now, all of a sudden, everybody remembered their tribal affiliations. Now, the first tribe to revolt against Dunama and the Sefuwa was the Tubu. Now, the Tubu were in Kanem as well, and the Tubu was not having it at all. So they started a 7-year war with the Sefuwa dynasty. Now, after some time, the Tubu realized they were getting the business. So they tried to align themselves with the Kunari, or the Kanembu, the originator of the Kanem Empire. And so some of the Kunari would associate themselves with Tubu and fight the Sefuwa. Yeah, I know it's confusing. But eventually, the Sefuwa, had the upper hand. And so there was this civil war and unrest in this region for a very long time. Now this other group called the Bulala, they pretty much came out of nowhere. I'm just going to be honest, I'm a little confused myself. I'm not really sure who exactly the Bulala are, but I have a couple theories. The first theory is that the Bulala were actually a part of the Kanem Empire but were kicked out. Or the Bulala saw the civil duress in Kanem and decided to take advantage of that. Or they really cared about the Mune relic. I'm not really sure, but the Bulala were the ones that took advantage of the situation and defeated the Sefuwa. And they kicked out the Sefuwa, and the Sefuwa were forced to go down south into Borno. And that's where we get the name Kanem-Borno Empire. And they expanded even more. So to understand the Kanem Empire, we have to understand the different ethnic groups in that region. It wasn't just one ethnic group and one territorial designated region. The Kanem Empire had influence all over Africa, west and the east. And all this duress just goes to show the structure of that society. This one African relic united all these tribes under one roof. It wasn't even about religion. They held on to their traditional African beliefs, and in that, they were united. But when this one African Muslim decided to sever that tie, that's when the civil unrest came about. There's a lot of symbolism in that. Now, another great king was Idris Aluma. Now, like I said before, the Kanem Empire or the Kanem-Borno Empire were well known for their armored knights and their cavalry. And Idris Aluma was pretty much trying to expand and advance his empire. And so he would go into other people's territory, he would trade with other people. Now the Kanem Empire was a great empire, but unfortunately at some point they have to fall. Now there is no set time in which we can say, okay, this is when the Kanem Empire fell. But we know that the Kanem Empire got in conflict with the Fulani and the Hausa, other Muslim groups in West Africa. And it was during that time we began to see the decline of Kanem-Borno. But yo, this is just an introduction to the Kanem Empire. There's much more to learn about this great empire and these great African people. I encourage you to learn some more. It's your boy Home Team, y'all. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace.